Welcome back, guys. It's Colin with the Sun Pirates TCG, and we are back with another Gundam video. So as for today, we're going to do a relatively brief discussion on the upcoming potential ban list slash restriction list that the official Twitter account had posted a few days ago. Granted, this is coming a little bit late since their official announcement is coming in a couple days from this video, but otherwise, we'll still just post my thoughts here. And again, these are my thoughts. It's an opinion piece first and foremost. And while I'm going to be talking about quite a few cards, I'm not going to say that all of these cards together need to be hit, maybe like one or two changes at most, I would say. And it's also possible that nothing changes. A few considerations for this is because that we have the new Destiny starter deck coming up very soon, and GD04 being not terribly far off. I think it's within a month of recording this video, if I'm not mistaken. But with that out of the way, let's just get right into talking about what a lot of people are griping about, which the first couple of cards is the Arc 78 and Amuro. Not much surprises here. These cards are really strong. It's arguably the strongest level 4 link pair in the game. I don't even know if it's that arguable, frankly. They swing the game so heavily on level 4. Like, there's so many games just won and lost based on the fact that Arc 78 and Amuro came down on level 4. And these cards are just individually strong too. Like, Amuro can go on just about anything. Like, I've seen it get plenty of value just being put on like an Alfrith, an Ailstrike, the O, just plenty of things like that, right? And Arc 78 by itself too, just being that 3-4 body, you can put any pilot on to get that global +1 to your board. They're just really efficient for what they are, and honestly they outclass most other cards at their level. Now, there are a couple reasons why they would not be banned. From Bandai's perspective, they are, I guess, sort of the protagonists of the IP, right? This is the original Gundam and the original pilot, right? So it could be a brand issue that they might not want to ban these cards. I don't know how heavily the Gundam design team would take that into consideration. I know there's been considerations like that before in, let's say, One Piece with, like, you don't really want to ban a Monkey D. Luffy card, right? Because that is the main character. Again, I'm not sure how heavily that comes into play, but there are other factors too, like the fact that these are from the very first starter deck. ST01 is an entry point for new players, and not only that, but they did announce a few months ago that they would try to reprint and produce more copies of ST01 through 4. So if their intention is to continue having new players buy these products to get into the game with, it's a little bit awkward to have like some of their first cards for a new player be like not playable, right? There are also new cards being designed for Amuro. One example is the new Headless Gundam from GD04. That card doesn't function without Amuro. Now, it's possible that you print another Amuro, but there hasn't really been an indication of that just yet, so who knows, right? But as of right now, if this is the only Amuro Ray in existence, we can't really have these new cards without him at this point, right? So if anything, I think it's less likely that Amuro gets banned or restricted. It's a little bit more likely that the Arc 70 gets restricted. Maybe it could be like set to 1 or 2 copies, and then, you know, you can still play your Amuro Ray with the GD01 Gundam, the NT1, etc. So that could be a way they go, although I still think that they might not do anything to these two cards just on the basis that they are starter deck cards and they are very iconic. Now, moving on to another starter deck card, we do have the Corsica base. This card for aggressive blue decks just fills too many roles in my opinion. It makes bodies, it draws cards, it provides you survivability because it's your base. It's also something that kind of breaks a fundamental rule with other bases, that this card does not necessarily have diminishing returns. So for other bases like the Archangel and Vesalius, you know, you don't really want to draw way too many copies because you might not need all of them at the same time, right? But replacing your Corsica with another Corsica is perfectly valid just because you make more Leos. And especially in a simplified board state, that can be very dangerous for your opponent. It kind of forces them to have specific answers like a Wing Zero, a Kshatriya, or something to that effect to, you know, deal with like multiple small bodies at the same time. So this card is really strong. Like in any aggressive deck, it just plays on curve extremely well, which is nice to have something like this, but it might be a little bit overtuned compared to something like the white base. Now I could see this one having a slightly greater likelihood of being banned or restricted compared to the Arc 78 and Amuro. It is a starter deck card, so there's that holding it back, like I said before, but the fact that it's not like the Gundam and the original pilot means that there could be a greater likelihood of this one getting hit. So we'll see. I would personally like to see this card go, but again, I'm just not sure if that's the direction that Bandai would take with this. But then let's move on to some non-starter deck cards. So we have the GD01 Angsha and Gun Tank. The pingers, they make blue just really, really versatile, having access to removal on top of the fact that blue already has access to like draw power, efficient bodies, and resting effects through like Amuro, right? So it makes blue just the baseline for any aggressive strategy, which kind of stinks because if you want to play an aggressive deck and you're not playing blue, it feels like you're really missing out on a lot. They also allow your aggro decks to trade up in combat when you're developing bodies, which is something that also breaks a fundamental rule of the game where if you have something at a higher level, you expect that body to be more valuable than something at a lower level. But for example, like if you have a Rick Diaz and it beats a 2-2 vanilla in combat, the gun tank makes it where the 2-2 just trades with the Rick Diaz, so a level 2 unit just trades for a level 3 unit, which feels kind of bad, right? Now I don't necessarily think that both of the cards on the slide need to be hit. If anything, I would say the gun tank over the Angsha just on the basis that the gun tank is literally half the level and half the cost of what the Angsha is. It makes the gun tank very, very easy to weave into your turns, and the fact that it's just a 1-2 body is just all you need because it's a thing that threatens to break shields. The gun tank is also more omnipresent in aggressive blue strategies, being in both blue-purple and blue-green aggro, like When You War or the Dynamis deck, whereas Angsha isn't always seen in the blue-purple decks, maybe not as 4 copies. So if you want to pull back the power level of these blue aggro decks, this is also definitely a way to go. And it's not too devastating to people's collections as well, considering that these are just uncommons and commons from GD01, not necessarily from a starter deck. And while we're on the topic of pingers, we also have the Barbarous Adapt. This card is really, really strong. Honestly, it's even stronger than the blue pingers, I would say, because of the unconditional ping damage. You know, it can target anything. It doesn't have to be a rested unit. And on top of all that, but it links with Mikazuki. And very cheaply, I might add. You know, just being a 2 cost, you link your pilot for 1. It's just 3 cost to have a rush link unit, right? Imagine if the Angsha could link with Amuro. That's like basically what we're saying here. So it's like a very similar stat line to Angsha, and it has that linking capability, which is a little bit crazy. If you want to pull back blue-purple as a deck specifically, this is definitely a way to go, I would say. This is the card that kind of took that archetype over the top. And it's also just a rare from GD03, so Bandai might be a little bit more enticed to hit something like this over like an LR, right? So I could definitely see them going in that direction as well. I personally think this card is a little bit overtuned for what it is, but I can see them wanting to keep it around as well just because it is a very strong and important enabler for these purple self-ping strategies. So until they make something else, I'm not sure that they would really want to get rid of the Adapt just yet. Another option that a lot of people are suggesting is to do a pair ban / choice restrict. So what this means is that there would be 2 or more cards on a list that just cannot be played together in the same deck. So in this example, we have the Mikazuki and Amuro Ray not being allowed to play it in the same deck, which makes sense. It makes it so that you effectively can't play blue-purple as it currently is, which it does effectively kill the deck. I think maybe there's some other way you can go about it with that color combination. But the way it currently is, you have this really consistent low to the ground fast strategy that a lot of decks just can't readily deal with. So maybe having these choice restricted is a good way to go. It also makes it so that you're not actually banning any cards. So if you still want to play with your Amuros and Gundams, or you still want to play with your Mikazukis, you can still play with them just in other like shells, right? So that's definitely a way to go, especially for future design possibilities where new cards get printed for both white base team or Tekkadan, and then you still get to play with your original cards. Now, with all that being said, a lot of these cards that we just suggested are things that would specifically nerf blue-purple maybe a little bit of the When You War aggro decks as well, but there would be a power vacuum left behind if we were to eliminate blue purple as a deck, so to speak, right? So what's next? Is Wing Zero the best deck? Is it going to be the Banshee blue red control decks? Is it a blocker deck with like Ale Strikes and a bunch of Elfris and Rigdiases, or will it be some sort of like low to the ground Xeon aggro deck? Not sure. I know people have had some concerns over whether we nerf aggro too far and then the blocker decks just become too prevalent and people don't necessarily like that style of gameplay. It could go either way. For example, I'm not sure if they would really hit the blockers like Elfrith or Rick Diaz at the moment. I actually think at this recording this, they revealed another Elfrith adjacent, so I definitely don't think that's the way they're gonna go with this. But I think that might be a discussion for another day as far as like what gameplay patterns are more desirable, whether you want like slow, grindy blocker heavy metas or fast aggressive metas. You know, to each their own. But like I said before, I don't think that we need a lot of changes to the format, maybe just like 1 or 2 tweaks to make things feel a little bit better balanced. But again, like I said, there's new products coming, so things could already change organically, right? So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know your predictions. We have a couple days before their official announcement. Do you think there will be any changes? Do you think there will not be any changes? Let me know. But at any rate, thank you all so much for watching. As always, remember to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.